What's up, family? Thank you for tuning in to the Dream Nation podcast. My name is Casanova. I'll be your host, and I'm excited to be bringing to you entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and trailblazers from around the world. Stay locked in with us because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life. What's up, Dream Nation? Today on the line, we got my man, Mr. Doug Depte. And today we're going to make sure that we inspire like we always do, but we're going to make sure that we give you some strategy, some tactics, and make sure that you leave out of here with a vision. And it's going to be all around real estate today. And I'm excited. You guys know that I'm in real estate. I love it. So when I get another fellow entrepreneur that's in real estate, that's crushing it on every single level, I'm telling you, this is going to be fire. So stay tuned, stay locked in. But let's get right into it. Mr. Doug Depte, you want to do me a favor and say what's up to Dream Nation?
What's up, Dream Nation? We're here. Doug Depte live in effect. Let's get it.
Man, let's get it. So, hey, I always like to start off by giving the right proper introduction to any of the guests. And so I always like to think of us as entrepreneurs, especially real estate entrepreneurs, as superheroes. Why? Is because we're flying around, we're wearing a lot of different capes, and we're trying to solve a lot of different problems. So before all of the fame, before you had hundreds of properties in real estate, before you've been able to teach hundreds of students how to be able to buy their own real estate, and before all of the business networking and the relationships, let's go back to when you were just a young boy. Tell me, who is Doug Depte?
All right, so, my name is Doug. I was, my birthplace is Camden, New Jersey. I lived in the suburbs of New Jersey up until I was 4. We moved out to a place called Bluebell, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia. And, my dad was a CPA by nature. He was the president of a record company growing up. He started his own business in the weight loss food. He partnered with Dick Gregory years ago, which was amazing, just seeing all that transpire. He did a multi-level company. Him and my mom did a multi-level company for about 10 years of my life. So they worked from home. My mom on the other side, finance. So really understanding the numbers, and, my parents, even just watching them throughout, just my childhood, they played the stock market heavy. They got caught up in the .com era. So I literally saw them have $1 million. They just got depleted, basically wiped out their whole portfolio. But they were in there making thousands of dollars a day. So that kind of fascinated me in the whole financial world, the financial market. Then in addition to that, we would go see open houses and so forth, all throughout my childhood. And, that story is wild in itself.
Got it. No, I love it. So you were already exposed to it from a very young age about financial literacy, about all those things. So talk to me about, where did the love for real estate come from? Because of course we're exposed to a lot of things as kids. So for you, how did real estate become that one thing that you wanted to lock in on?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So kind of take it a step back. When I was in, say, 3rd grade or so, my brother was incarcerated. So for every single Sunday, we would actually have to drive to Graterford prison, and we would literally take, food in to give him. I would put money that I would make on my birthdays. I would put that actually on his books. It was actually, to a child, it was very traumatizing. To the point where, I'm getting patted down. I got to stand there while a guard pats me down, empty my pockets. Once that door behind me closes, then I can proceed and go through the next door. It was crazy. And, even going into like the hall where they had these vending machines with the burgers, with the, vacuum sealed, you would heat them up. So I was like, man, this is crazy.
Right.
But what my parents did was, they actually took me to an open house immediately after going to the prison and spending hours there. They would take me to open houses. And that's really where I believe my passion and excitement for real estate really began. And we would see the open houses. I would get free cookies. I would get beverages. Like every basement I felt like had like a little toy mat where you could play with the cars and, just bouncing around and so forth. So, every single week I would just look forward to seeing these open houses, eating the food, and just really just fantasizing that one day I wanted to own some real estate.
Got it. So you was dreaming already. I love it. So then talk to me about, when did you decide that you were first going to get into real estate? Did it take you a while? when was that first time that you had the opportunity to get into real estate and you capitalized on it?
Yeah, so, to take it back, when I went to school with, super wealthy kids, like kids that were getting the Range Rovers for their 16th birthday. They were taking private jets, PJs to Australia during their birthdays and so forth. But what I realized was that the parents, they all had the commonality of owning real estate, owning properties. They would always talk about, oh, we have properties over here, we have apartment buildings, we have our second homes. So I was like, man, this is interesting. So something that, again, this spark that I want to eventually own properties and be able to have my kids go to school in limos and so forth. But the really changing point was, I read the book, Richest Man in Babylon. My dad gave it to me when I was in 7th grade, so that kind of got me thinking about finances a little differently. I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was also amazing.
Oh yeah.
And so I knew right away, reading those books that I wanted to get into real estate. And then I think what really pushed me over the edge, where I was like, I gotta keep moving, was when I invested in a course. I don't even want to say his name. I'm almost embarrassed to say his name, but it was Donald Trump's course. I paid $3,000 for it. And I remember sitting on the couch with my brother, this was, after he got out. And I was just like contemplating, I was walking back and forth, and, I was doing my research. I said, man, I want to get this program. And he's like, well, do you have the money? I said, yeah, I have the money. Well, he's like, if you got it, get it. I said, man, you got to get it. So that when I wrote that check, that was the biggest check I've written outside of paying my way through school. So I paid for it. I did the program. And then I knew that, with having that money invested, there's no turning back.
Right.
Like, no matter what, I had to take the next steps to own real estate, start collecting rents and cash flow and so forth.
No, I love it. And it's kind of like, obviously a good friend of ours and a mutual connection, Neo, he talks about, if you don't pay, you don't pay attention. When somebody, right. Obviously if there's no transaction, there's no transformation. He says those things all the time. And so for somebody like you, when you paid that money, and how old were you at this time?
At this time, I was right in college, about 20 years old.
Wow.
So imagine being 20 years old, dropping $3,000
on a real estate investing course.
Right. That's $30, $100 bills. That seems like.
But you got to invest into yourself, though. So I love it. And so talk to me. What did that course? Was that course the course that propelled you, or would you say that course it didn't really do what it needed to, but it at least got you in the right direction?
I think that course for me, it really got me in the right direction. It scratched the surface, right?
Okay.
So that was me taking that first step, and then it gave me some tools that I could use, but really it was taking action.
Got it.
So, and I didn't really start taking action until a couple of years later, when I graduated college. I got my first job in Bank of America.
Okay.
And with working when I started Bank of America, is a crazy story, but as I'm going in, I was in this leadership rotational program. They call it the FMAPs. They pick like 5 people from University of Delaware. So I was selected. But long story short, as I'm walking in with HR, there's these people that walk into the elevator and they're in tears. They're crying. They're holding these boxes. And I asked the HR, nudge them to the side, hey, what's going on? And they said, well, oh yeah, we just had mass layoffs. Some of the senior guys, we're just laying them off, but just, making room for you guys to come in. This was during the nationalization scare. I was paying attention to the news. I was reading Wall Street Journal and so forth. And the banks were basically about to get nationalized. And this was a huge deal. Bank of America stock went from $60 to $5. But something struck me immediately, these people were in tears. And they had mortgages, they had kids in college, they were getting ready for retirement. And now the rug was just pulled right under from underneath their feet. And I'm like, man, I never want this to happen to me.
Right.
So that even pushed me even further, because I was like, remember that class I invested in, a couple years back, I have to get real estate. That was just more confirmation right there that, real estate was going to be the answer for me.
I love it, man. And so here's what I know as well, working in corporate America for a short amount of time, it just feels like that everybody could tell you no, but nobody could tell you yes. Right. And so that was the thing that you were exposed to, and you still took action on it. So did you just leave the job and then, go full-time real estate, or did you allow it to build up and then you left the job? Because that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is when should I leave? What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. A lot of people want to just, quit and get out of the workplace, as soon as possible. but I took kind of a different approach. I was going to leverage my job, leverage my 9 to 5, so that way I can aggressively save a lot of money, so that way I can keep dumping it into real estate.
Got it.
And then I was making this. So my job to me was a huge sacrifice, because like, I could have left years ago, but I decided to ride it out. And I was working, long hours. I was putting in 60, 70 hours every single week, day in and day out, just to, when it came time to year-end review, I get there, I sit down with my boss, and they say, "Hey, Doug, thank you for your hard work. However, we were expecting more out of you." I'm like, "More out of me? What do you mean? I gave you 70 hours every single week." And when you're on salary, you expect to only work 40 hours.
Right.
And then for them to say that there's no bonus dollars for you just because you're a meets, that's like devastating.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, but year after year after year, I was hearing the same thing over and over again. So in my free time, while I was at work, in my lunch breaks, I'm looking at real estate and I'm making transactions. I'm buying up properties and I'm collecting the cash flow. So that actually helped me to stay down. It helped me just to stay focused. So like, no matter what was going on at Bank of America, at the job, with the managers saying this and that, I knew that I had a plan. So at the end of the day, I knew that I was going to get the last laugh. But I was just a humble guy, just staying focused, not really telling too many people what I was doing, but I would still, let them know that, hey, this is just temporary.
I got it. I love that. So a lot of people, they want to know how they can get into real estate, right? That's the big thing, because we know that real estate is tried and true, right? It's the thing that's created the most millionaires. For somebody that comes to you and they say, "Doug, you know what? I'm looking to get into real estate. I want to get my next property or my first property in the next 30 days. What's the first thing that you're always telling them that they got to do?
I think first they really have to look at their finances, right? Because so often people just want to go ahead and do investments and such, but they really have to look at their financial picture, and they have to trim the fat. What I mean by trim the fat is looking at their expenses. Where is your money going? Is there any way to save or to eliminate certain things? Like for instance, some people I know pay $60 a haircut. I pay $8 a haircut. So right there is a small transaction that you could trim a lot of money. So imagine saving $40 per haircut. Most people get 2 every month. So that's $80 in a month. Then you times that by 12. So that's additional savings there. What if you cut the cable bill? And also, is there any ways where you can earn additional funds? But one way that I would recommend for anyone that doesn't have any property, definitely see about the first time home buyer or just the FHA program, simply because it's not that cash intense, right? You can put down 3.5% and you can acquire up to $800,000 property depending on what area you're in. So if you're working a 9 to 5, you're good with your money, you can put down a small amount of money. You can buy a 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 units. That's basically like a mini apartment building. And what I recommend is cutting your living costs down as close to zero as possible, right? Because when I cut my living costs down, then that allowed for more money to invest in. When you look at someone's financial picture, the majority of their funds is going to just keeping a roof over their head. So if you can eliminate that large cost and live for free or close to it, then you're in a position where you're going to have an abundance of cash flow. But
so give me another way, because somebody's listening at this right now and they love it. They're like, okay, I think I could do that. But what's one of those ways that you've taught someone, or you see a lot of people, that they could cut just 1 or 2 expenses to see that it's possible? Because you said about living with, you're really trying to use your money to keep that roof over your head. What's some ways that we could cut that down?
All right, so one way, if you have a 3-bedroom apartment or house, if one room is open, you can rent that room out, get some extra cash flow coming in, right? The cable bill, most people are switching over to streaming. There's Netflix, there's Hulu, there's so many different platforms, IGTV, there's other sources to entertain yourself. And really, truthfully, I would just recommend cutting the cable completely. I don't even have cable to this day.
I don't either. I love it.
So it's something where, people are spending hours watching TV shows. Hours. They'll go home, they'll work, and they'll watch 3 to 5 hours worth of TV. So imagine if you cut that cable bill completely, so there's no 3 to 5 hours of TV that you can watch, and you focused in and you locked in on, if it's real estate, if it's whatever your passion is that you want to learn, you can really devote that time into building your business, building your knowledge, getting that information, because information is key. Information changes the situation. So now the more information you have, now you're able to elevate faster than just sitting down watching the TV and getting sold by commercial after commercial after commercial hitting you on top of the head.
Got it. I love it. What's one thing that you've seen that most brand new real estate investors, when they first get in, where is one thing that they always fall short on? Because somebody right now, they're listening at this and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to go home tonight. I'm going to check out my finances. I'm going to maybe talk to my partner. We're going to see what type of money that we got. But then when they go to jumping in, the reason why some people don't get started, I would say, is because they hear about these horror stories. And so by trying to help somebody out, like what's one way in the beginning that somebody can make sure that they don't lose on their first property?
Yeah, I wish that I reached out and got like an actual mentor, someone to kind of coach me through step by step. I'm more of a risk taker, so I was like, hey, I'm just gonna learn on the way. So I made a lot of mistakes throughout those 8 to 10 years. I wish there was someone there that was just going to be able to break everything down for me. Also, making sure that you know how to analyze a deal. Me being a financial analyst, it helped being able to know the numbers, right? But most people just buy a deal just to say that they own real estate. But if you just own a property just to own real estate, well, you look at it, by the time you do the numbers, collect your rents, and look at your expenses, and if you're in a negative cash flow position, then there's no point in owning that piece of real estate. You should have went with another option, but you don't know that if you don't know how to analyze the deal and know the numbers.
I love it. The first thing I got out of this is you need some type of community support, right? A mentor is going to be great, right? A coach is going to be great, but analyze where that person is, and they might be too high up on the ladder for you to be able to afford that person. So be able to just find somebody that's a couple steps ahead, that's more importantly accessible. You want the information, but you want the access. So I love that you said that. But then the second part of it is you were talking about analyzing a deal. And that's something that we all need to be able to know how to do. Talk to me about, is there a couple, one or two things that people can do to be able to know how to analyze a deal, or how does that come?
Yeah, so I put together a whole deal analytical calculator, but one of the key strategies in how I invest now, and just to kind of take a step back, I'm looking for undervalued assets that I rehab, I rent them out, I get nice rents because I fix these properties up high end, and then I just go ahead and refinance. So I basically put a new mortgage on the property to get rid of my short-term financing, put a new mortgage on the property, and then I keep doing that process over and over again. So when it comes to analyzing a deal, I use something called the 65% rule. So the 65% rule, that's a rule that keeps me safe when it comes to looking at a deal. So simply put, let's say when we're looking at the 65% rule, that means you don't want to be in a project any more than 65% on the purchase as well as the rehab. So what that means is, let's say if we have a property that's valued at $100,000, for the purchase and rehab should not exceed any more than 65% of that. So that's $65,000. So I have to be within $65,000 on the purchase and rehab. And when I stay within that rule, what that allows me to do is, it allows me to get into the project and get funding. But also on the back end is, once I have it rented and stabilized, now I'm able to do what we call a cash out refi at 75%. So you notice there's that 10% gap. That's going to allow me to get all of my initial cash back, right in my pocket, which then I can use that cash to do that whole process again. And so every time I do that process, I'm spitting out $700 a month of cash flow, $1,000 a month in cash flow. But I'm using that same capital and just washing it over and over again and accumulating more and more bricks. So that's the name of the game, but it all starts with analyzing that deal and knowing where the values come in at. And that's what I perfect.
I love it. I love that. So talk to me, for a lot of people, they're hearing it and they say, okay, I do want to get property. I want to be able to learn how to analyze a deal, but where do I find these deals? What do you always tell your people? Is there one or two places that you think is a go-to place to be able to find a good deal?
Yeah. I mean, these deals are everywhere. I mean, they're right outside. Like, you can walk your neighborhood and you can find houses that are dilapidated, falling apart, find out who owns them, get in contact with them, and start doing that transaction. That's one way. But right on the MLS, and that's the multiple listing service, where you can go on Zillow.com, Redfin.com, network with different realtors, people selling deals. There's something called wholesalers, which you can go, and get wholesalers, people that are, their whole job is just finding deals, locking up a contract, and then they look to sell you that contract, and then they make whatever in the middle. So, you want to network with all these wholesalers, and you just constantly want to get on as many mailing lists as possible and just have people flowing you deal after deal after deal. Because, I have, if you look at my email box, I'm getting like 40 to 50 deals, if not more, every single day. And I'm looking at these deals every single day. I'm getting up at 3:30 in the morning just to look at these deals before I go work out. So you got to keep that consistency and persistency just over and over and over again if you want to, have longevity in this game, if you want to improve in this game. And you just have to have that attitude that you want to get better. And you have to have that why, right? My why was to get out of corporate America. But now, I was out of corporate America, but now there's no point in me doing what I want to do, building my future, and my wife's still checking in with the man, every single day, 3 times a day, because she's a nurse on her feet for 12 hours. And then it's like, man, my goal has to be bigger than me. I have to get my wife out of there too. So now she's able to work on the business with us. She's out, and now I'm working on the future, getting my kids situated, which I don't even have yet. But it's just, you have to keep that why, you have to keep that hunger so you can keep going, keep adding properties each and every day. And all it's going to do is provide that freedom and mobility. So that's really what I'm excited about, just having more freedom, more mobility, and changing the neighborhoods, right? I mean, we're going into these dilapidated houses, we're making them pristine, immaculate. We're putting families in. And I mean, these families are getting the keys and they're ecstatic. They want to stay forever. So it's just a win-win all the way around.
I love that. Absolutely. Real estate changes everything, and it's so beautiful for the economy. Talk to me about, was there ever one property that was an aha moment for you that you was like, yo, I'm never getting out of real estate again? And if so, talk to me about what that deal looked like.
Oh man, so I'm gonna tell you the real deal that basically changed my life forever, right?
Yeah.
So early on, when I bought my first collection of properties, I was putting 20% down, and I was collecting a nice return on that 20% down. I was receiving a return on my money anywhere between 55 to 85% return, which I thought was fantastic.
Oh yeah.
So but the only problem was, while working at the job, if you buy something for $100,000, you got to put 20% down. That's $20,000, boom, out the door. So I was only limiting myself to 2 or 3 deals a year because I'm spending, $60,000 a year on just buying investment properties. But the one property that changed my mind was when I said, you know what, I came to Philadelphia and I said, I want to buy one of these shells. People, I keep hearing so much about shells. I want to buy a shell. I want to fix it up.
And what is a shell for people that don't know and that's not from Philadelphia?
So people that don't know, basically a shell is a house that is basically just got the brick walls and that's it. Or something you have to completely rip everything in the inside out and put it back together.
Got it.
So that's a shell. So I went against my grain. I paid $25,000 for a shell, and this is just straight cash. And the contractor at the time was like, hey man, the budget's gonna be $75,000, but I recommend just do this whole deal cash. Don't even worry about the banks, just use cash. And I was looking at my account, I had the cash available. So I went in, bought the house cash, we got title insurance, of course, but then I was paying for the construction to get done. And I mean, these guys came and they blitzed through the rehab, they blitzed through the demo. That's when they took all the plaster off the walls. They took all the interior walls out the property, basically a full gut is what we call it. I mean, this house was terrible. The roof was caving in. The first floor was just in the basement. So it was terrible. We had to redo the whole front wall. So with that property, I outlaid, a massive amounts of cash in the construction because these guys are rolling, they're hyping me up. They're like, man, all we need is just some more funds. We're gonna run through this project. So before you know it, I'm like 75 grand in, and all I have is just the property framed up. But then things started slowing down. They started slowing down bad. Like, I was in that project for a total of 2 years, and I was hearing all type of excuses. I mean, it was so-and-so's birthday. It was the Pope was in town. It was Big Tank weekend. I'm like, who the heck is Big Tank? And what does he have to do with my project?
Right.
So with that, I was like, man, you know what? I'm never ever giving this much control to someone that, of my money and my project. So eventually the way I got out of that situation is I ended up completing that project myself. I said, you know what, you got it this far. I'm gonna go ahead and get some guys in here and put the play together to finish it off. So thankfully the contractor did give me a check back later on once I got it complete. But the beautiful thing about real estate, even though you think that it's a loss, I mean, during that 2 years, I'm like, man, like this is crazy. Like, what am I gonna do? And I had to find other ways to go about getting funding. That's when I started developing my credit card strategies, my balance transfer strategies, my business credit strategies. But in real estate, you never really lose. And what I mean by that is, even after all that I went through for 2 years, I took the property to the bank. They appraised it for $150,000. I got my 100 grand right back. So I got to the table and the bank gave me a check, and I was able to put that 100 grand back in my pocket. Like, what type of education are you able to go through and get that money right back? Yes, it did take 2 years. And what I lost was the opportunity cost, right? Could have ran at least buying 3-4 more properties doing my old style of investing. But I was thankful because that was the cost of my education.
Got it. Man, that's beautiful. And I've had so many deals like that as well, where it's looked like that on the front end, you're going to lose a lot, right? Because there's so many things that are always the unknown, but the fact that you went through it, that's amazing. I love it. Now talk to me about, you said that in the beginning, you were using a lot of your own money. Right? Yep. Now, the big thing nowadays, especially when people, for those who don't know, kind of what the strategies that you're describing, which is something that I do heavily as well. And it's how I got started, was on the BRRRR strategy, right? And it's a lot less money that you have to come out of pocket, and basically you're financing on the back end. But talk to me about when you started looking for private money or hard money or business credit, like how did you develop that strategy? Was there somewhere that like, you're like, man, I'm so glad that I found this company? Or how does someone look at a private money lender or a hard money lender, or even business credit?
Yep. Nah, very good, very good. So I've always been a big component of credit cards and having access to capital, even when I didn't need it. So I was just spending, I would just have fun on the weekends.
That's a nugget right there. Having access to the capital, even when you don't need it, because especially like the time that we're going through right now, where it looks like everything's being shut down, do you have access to the capital if you need it? So I just hope that people take heed of that.
That's major, it's major. So, think of 100 grand just tied up over here. So I had to, luckily I was able to build up these credit cards and so forth. So I'm sitting on the couch one day and I get this balance transfer check, right in my mail. For those that don't know what a balance transfer check is, this is a blank check that's coming from your credit card company. And the intention of having a balance transfer is, let's say we got Chase, we got Bank of America, and Bank of America wants to win Chase's customers, want to pull them over to Bank of America and put their loans with Bank of America because they're going to get interest, right? So one way that they do this is they'll send the Chase customers these balance transfers, say, hey, transfer your balance at 0% interest for 18 months, right? So what they expect you to do is you write the check out, you put the money in your account, and then you go ahead and pay off your Chase card. So now you have no interest for those 18 months, but then after the 18 months hits, now you're paying those 14%, 20%, 25% of interest to Bank of America. So now Chase lost that customer, lost that balance, but that's what a balance transfer is. And I worked in the banking industry, so I know this stuff. Like I was in the credit card division. I was on the controller team, the risk management, risk mitigation, all back office finance stuff. But with that balance transfer, I was like, you know what? One day I want to purchase a property using these balance transfer checks. So that was one of my creative ways of purchasing a property out in Coatesville. I picked it up for $27,000. So I wrote a check for $30,000 from the balance transfer. I dropped it in my account. And then the rehab was very light. It was like, I think about $20,000. So I had another balance transfer check, wrote that into my account. In 2 to 3 days, that money was there. And that's what I used to fix up the property. So now I got the property rented. And then I say, you know what? There's a local bank right here in Coatesville Savings Bank. Let me bring them this property. I have the tenant. I'm renting it out Section 8. So they say, hey, Doug, it's a great deal. Property's worth $80,000. So they were able to cut me a check. I think it was for like 65 grand or so. He cut me a check back. I paid off the balance transfers, but then I had a surplus of cash. I had an extra $18,000, $20,000 in cash, which I then was able to use that to open up a bed bug business, a pest control company.
Yeah.
So now I got the truck, got the logo, the website. I put my brother who was on the couch, I put him into a manager position where he's fighting bed bugs for me while I'm working the 9 to 5 and owning real estate. So I was able to do all of that with those balance transfer checks, OPM, other people's money, right?
Right.
So with doing that, then I said, man, I got this bed bug company. Why don't I take that business plan to the bank, and I got a business line of credit through the bed bug company.
Got it.
Now I was sitting with thousands of dollars there, which was just more money I could just dump back into real estate and run the whole place. That was really like my true introduction, besides that Philly rental where I had the $100,000 tied up, where I was like, oh, okay, this is how it works. So things started to click. Even without me even hearing all this terminology, bird strategy, I was like, hey, this is a way to use other people's money,
right?
Get the property situated. As before I knew about the 65% rule, I just did my numbers like, hey, my goal is just get my money back.
Right.
You want to give me my money back and then some? So then it's like, oh, I see how this works. So that's when the aha moment kicked in. And I was like, man, that's the play.
Now I love it. And I'm sure there's somebody listening at this right now that they're like, man, I'm about to look into business credit, balance transfer checks. But what's one of the lessons that you learned with doing that? Because obviously with every good, there's a bad, right? So talk about, what's a lesson that somebody needs to learn? Because if we get out there and they're like, yo, I tried this balance transfer, and then all of a sudden they lost 40 grand on the deal, they're going to come back and they're going to be like, where Doug at? Right? So what's one thing on that?
One thing is know your values, right? Know where the value of that property that you're looking to purchase is going to be once you fix it up. And then staying at that 65% rule is going to keep you safe, because there's lenders out there that'll cash you out at 75 to 80%. So that's going to give you enough cushion if things go wrong, right? So worst case scenario, you get all your money back. But even, take it another worst case scenario, even if you don't get all your money back, you might leave $5,000 in the deal, but that might still equate to 2% down in the deal.
Right. And
remember, I came in this game paying 20% down in the deal. So now I have all this extra cushion to, even if things don't go as I please, I'm still in a good position to own real estate, and I know I'm going to get that money back right through the cash flow. But the beautiful thing is, if you are able to position it to get all your money back, now you're playing with house money. And what's the return on house money? Infinite. Because before I was excited about getting that 75% return on my money. You look at the bank, you put your money in a savings account, you get a 1% return, if that. I mean, now you probably only get 0.00002% with the way the economy's going. But getting the 80% double-digit return on your money, that's like huge. So even putting 20% down and still getting that return is crazy. My break even back then when I was investing was 1.2 years. I was getting all my money back. And then after that, it was just free money coming in. But now I was able to shorten that down even more and able to get all of my initial cash back within 3 months.
Right.
Then I figured out, hey, it doesn't even have to be my cash. It could be cash coming from somebody else, OPM, through the business cards, the balance transfers, and so forth. So now I'm like, man, I can keep getting infinite returns, because it's not my money I'm getting a return on. It's somebody else's money that I'm getting returned on.
Man, I love it. And so for somebody, again, that's listening, understand that even if you're going to go buy your primary home, whatever you're going to buy, you're always going to have to leverage other people's money. If you're doing your primary home and you're doing a 3.5% down, understand that other 96.5%, you're still leveraging OPM. So if you can leverage the front side and leverage the back side, you're winning all day. And just like you said, if you know your numbers and you know your value, it's very hard for you to lose. But another key point that I love that you brought up, and this is something I tell people all the time, let's say that you don't get all of your money back out of the deal, right? If you had to go buy a regular conventional property with a conventional loan, you're in for 20 to 25%, like you said. Let's say you only still got to keep $5,000 in the deal, that might only be 2 to 3%. Right? So, man, that's so clutch that you said that, and I love it. What's been for you over the last year and a half? Because now you've scaled. You got your wife out of the job, you're out of the job, you're traveling, you're teaching other people. What's been the biggest lesson, though, that biggest aha moment for you that you've had to learn over this last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest was delegation, right? Delegating. So basically being comfortable letting other people handle different areas of the business. I mean, for about 7 years of the business, I was doing everything. You know, I was running the wire, I was doing plumbing, I was doing the maintenance, I was, showing tenants properties, I was collecting rent. I was doing it all.
Yeah.
There's nothing within real estate that I can't do, right? So once I started to build my team, we got 2 virtual assistants in the Philippines right now. They're taking care of all the paperwork, the books, the expenses. They're even answering calls on the property management side, and really starting to build that team. I even have my mom. My mom was sitting retired. She wanted something to do. I said, you know what, Mom? How about we make you the leasing agent? It's very easy. People are going to call you. You just post some of the pictures right online, and people are going to call you. You screen them. You just go out to the property. You take a look at it. But when someone wants the property, we screen them. Everything looks good, and I'll just cut you the first month's check. So she's like, wait, you're gonna give me $1,200 just for doing that? So now she could be leasing up, 3-4 properties every single month. So now my mom is getting the extra $4 or $5 grand of cash right in her hands just for helping her son out, and while she's kicking back watching the stories.
Right, I love that. That's what it means to truly put your family on. Right? Yeah. You learn, you earn, but then you give back and you help other people. So I love that you brought up that point. Here's one other thing though, and this is something that I've been very intrigued about, and I know a lot of other people are intrigued about. You teach a lot of your students about how they can get paid as their own GC.
Oh yeah.
And that's a hack right there. That's a big hack, major hack. So I hope people are listening. Talk to me about that. Like, how do you get paid as your own GC?
Oh man, this might be too many jewels, man. We might just end this.
We might have to bring it. This might be premium right here.
Should I keep going? All right. So real quick. So, taking you back to that story where I had the $100 grand tied up for 2 years, and I said a conscious decision like, yo, I'm never going to have another person be in control of my project again. So that forced me, just seeing that whole process of putting that house back together. I was like, man, this is nothing I can't do.
Right.
These DCs and these people are no smarter than I am. So I started figuring out a way how to put my own projects together. Then in addition to putting my own projects together, when I went to the lender, I was like, I'm going to be the GC on this project. I got my license, I got all the insurances, I got all the waivers signed and so forth.
So you went and got your GC license. You didn't just throw it in there.
No, I got my license, and it's an easy thing to do. So I grabbed the GC license, and then when I did a project, I was like, they're like, you can charge a true cost, but I'm like, why would I charge a true cost when I could charge exactly what a GC would charge, but I would be able to make that margin, because now I'm not working for free. We're not just putting these houses together, running around. I could be focusing on something else, and hire a GC for all that. But
so now, there's somebody out there that's wondering, what does true cost mean? What's true cost?
Yep. So true cost is the true cost for labor and materials. So the actual cost for those things. And then what a GC does is they mark it up. And the markup is, let's say for instance, you have this pen for $1. And let's say I mark it up 25%. So you take this pen for $1, times it by 1.25. So the pen is no longer $1. I'm gonna sell it to you for $1.25, and I'm gonna make that 25 cents.
Got
right? It. So now let's take it to a budget. If this budget is put together, this house is I put the budget in at $100,000, but I mark it up 25%, or 25%, give or take. So the true cost might be $75,000, but I told the bank I need $100. So just for doing that property, I'm getting extra $25,000 in my pocket. But when I run my numbers, I'm still analyzing the deal with the GC fee at 65%, at the 65% rule. Now I figured out a way how to get paid all throughout the project. I'm getting my money back when I cash out. And then there's going to be 9 times out of 10, there's going to be some money left over on the cash out, because there's such a nice margin in that property. And I'm always looking at the cash flow too. We're not doing all this with no cash flow.
Right.
Again, we got to make sure we have cash flow with a debt coverage ratio of over 1.25 is what the banks want to see, but my debt coverage ratio exceeds like 1.75 almost on every deal.
Man, that's clutch. And I'm glad you brought up the cash flow too, because you want to make sure when you're doing these types of deals that once you do the refi, you still have enough cash flow in there. So I'm glad that you brought that part up. That was a major hack, and I appreciate you sharing. Man, this has been so fire. Talk to me about, what do you feel like where do you feel like the economy is going? Like, should people be looking at buying real estate right now? Should people be looking at, 6 to 12 months saving up? Like, what's the emergency or the need to buy real estate right now, if there is one?
Yeah, I would say the time is now to buy real estate. Interest rates are as low as they ever been, and I feel that they're even dropping even lower. So they're making the price of entry, very affordable. From if you want to get FHA loans, but even with hard money lenders, those rates are coming down as well. So for those that know how to fish and find properties, they're going to be in a fantastic position, because they know how to take something that looks crazy and actually turn it into money, basically turning bricks into cash. So knowing that skill and having that skill, you're going to be unstoppable. And what I like about my strategy is I'm not going after these $4,000 a month rents, $5,000 a month rents. I'm going after that nice affordable rent range of $1,000 to $1,500 a month. And the way I'm fixing up these properties, even in a down market, there's people paying that $2,000, $3,000 in rents. They're going to gravitate toward the properties that I'm putting on the market simply because they're a great price point, and there's not going to be that much supply at that price point. So now there's going to be a higher demand for my style of properties in the neighborhoods that they're in. So my rents actually might go up in a situation of a downturn.
Got it. I love it. And your focus, again, is always making sure that you can buy right. If you stay under that 65%, you make sure that you have the cash flow. So is your cash flow, or is your rent price one of the first things that you determine to say, like, oh, okay, this is a $1,500 neighborhood that I can rent in. If I can get it under this price, right, then I should be good, because I know that I can increase the rent to 12 to 13. And even at worst, where if I can't be as competitive, I'm at 1,500.
Exactly. So the beautiful thing is, when you have control, my biggest thing is control. Like, I played the stock market over the course of my life, and even watching my parents lose $1 million in the stock market, I knew that they really didn't have control. But when I look at real estate, I have more control, simply because in a down economy, even if I want to lower the rents, let's say my monthly expenses on the house is $500, and I'm used to receiving $1,200, right?
Right.
Now I could lower my rents all the way down on a 4-bedroom house, all the way down to $600 and still be good. Or I could rent out each individual room of that property, because people are now scrambling, like, hey man, just give me $200 for the month. 2 times 4 is $800. I'm still covering my $600. So you have options that you're not going to be stuck in real estate. And also, with the way I'm investing, using the BRRRR strategy and so forth, your cash doesn't get depleted. So that's a very important key. You got to have some cash in this game. So now you're able to shoot when you see opportunities, because your cash never gets depleted. Back when I was investing, by the time I buy 3 properties, I'm already depleted $60,000. Now I got to wait for that $60,000 to build back up for me to buy another set of 3 properties.
Got it. I love that. Do you do your own property management then? Because I heard you say you have the property management company. Do you do your own property management?
Absolutely. So yeah, we got property management in-house. Like I said, I'm a frugal guy. So with being frugal, me cutting an 8 to 10% check is extremely hard. Especially when most of my rents, good portion of my rents are coming in Section 8. At least half my portfolio is coming in Section 8 through the government. So it's not really that hard to manage those. The money is coming in like clockwork.
Man, I love it. Talk to me. What's your favorite? You already mentioned kind of one earlier, which was Rich Dad Poor Dad. But other than that, do you have a favorite real estate book, or a book that has taught you a ton?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to grasp exactly, which book per se. I mean, The Automatic Millionaire was a good book.
Okay.
That basically taught me.
That's one I never read, so I love that you said that.
The Automatic Millionaire was good, and that was great for just teaching me how to set things up automatically. That's basically what I got out of that. So, I mean, having my credit card payments automatic, my mortgage payments automatic, even my savings account automatic, my investments accounts automatic, because it's hard and people get sloppy when, let's say if you got, 30 mortgages out there, you got 30 tax bills, 30 water bills. If I have to sit down every single month personally and actually write a check for each one of these, bills, I'll be there for 4 to 8 hours a day, just writing bills and doing all this foolishness. Where when
you could have been analyzing deals.
Yeah, right. I could be analyzing deals, exactly, or pay a VA to do that now. So it's just a situation, and the virtual assistant is $3 an hour. So you get 2 virtual assistants for $6 an hour. So it's just crazy how you could just leverage your time in a way where you can be more productive and pass that off to other things. And I'm actually thinking about having a VA just analyze deals, because like I said, I'm getting 50 to 100 deals a day. Hey, here's all the deals, run it through my calculator and spit back the ones that make sense.
I love it, man. What's one thing that you wish you would have known sooner that you know now when it comes to investing or just running a profitable business?
So say that one more time. Let me just make
What's
sure.
What's one thing that you wish you would have learned sooner that you know now that just goes to real estate investing or even just running a profitable business?
Absolutely. I say one thing, I already touched on the delegation, building your relationships, your financial relationships, right? Okay. So you have to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, John, I have a deal, it needs to get funded, we're going to close I got to close in a week and a half. Like for instance, I bought 2 deals back to back. It was an apartment building and one of the properties that I fixed up and my parents live in. But I had to close like immediately. So I went to my guy, Ken Weinstein with Jumpstart Germantown. I ran to his office and said, hey, Ken, I need funding for this deal.
So he's a private money, hard money lender.
Yeah, he's like a private money, hard money lender within the neighborhood of Germantown, Mount Airy section of Philadelphia. So I ran to him. I said, yo, Ken, we've got to get this deal done. It's a great deal. The ARV is, $375. The purchase price is $125. I can get the deal done for $60,000 of construction, but we got to pull the trigger. All right, send me all the numbers. And long story short, we were able to close that deal in a week and a half. But having those relationships is very important, especially in this business. I mean, it's a relationship business at the end of the day. You have to be somebody that's likable. You have to be able to communicate with people. You have to be able to negotiate with people. So negotiations is amazing. How much money you can save simply by saying, hey, was that your best price? I need to get that number down. There's going to be a lot of repeat business, and you have to share with people that work for you the dream, right? It's not just one house. So you're not going to get rich off of me with this one house. You're going to get rich off of me by doing multiple deals, multiple properties. I'm going to keep you busy. I'm going to keep your guys busy. I'm going to keep food on your table in a way. So you just got to sell that vision. And now you're able to get people to work for you and move for you in different kind of ways that are going to be advantageous for you as well as them. So it's a win-win situation.
Man, there it is right there. That's what I was hoping to get into, was the relationships part. Everybody who knows me knows that I'm all about it. And that's how Doug and I was able to get on this call together, is because of a mutual relationship. And man, I just hope that people take action off of this. Now, Doug, there's somebody out there that's listening at this, that they're inspired. They're ready to go out there, learn some more about real estate, get their first property under contract or get their next profitable deal under contract. But they got that little voice in their head. And that little voice in their head says that they're not strong enough, they're not smart enough, maybe they don't have enough resources. What's one thing that you tell that person to get them to just take action?
Hey, you got to take action, and it really comes down to confidence, right? So lack of confidence is what's keeping a lot of people back. And what I notice is the more knowledge you have, the more confidence you have. Because a lot of things, it's fear that's the little voice like, hey, you don't know enough, you can't do it. Well, as you start to, one thing is as you start to get small wins, right? And a small win is simply going into the store and asking for a discount and they're saying yes. Going in and waking up this morning is a small win, right? But it's a huge win. But as you start to calculate and look at all the different wins that hit your life, every single minute, now you start to build up your confidence like, hey, I can do it. And then also you have to look at like, where'd you come from? You're here at this point right now, and you probably had some trials and tribulations through that time. and you're alive, right? You're here today, you're breathing. So what I recommend is, obtaining the knowledge, but knowledge is just not enough. You have to put the action behind the knowledge. You have to have confidence in yourself that no matter what happens, you're smart enough to figure it out. And I had that confidence in myself, and I took those steps, and I just keep taking those steps. Even though they were hard, I was tired, they hurt, but I kept moving forward no matter what. And I think that's what propelled me to where I am today, by just continuing to move forward. I got the knowledge, I obtained the knowledge, and I was willing to not give up. So if you give up, you're done. If you stop learning, you're done. If you stop changing, you're done.
Got it, man. There it is. I hope somebody takes heed to that advice. This has been amazing, my brother. You've dropped so many jewels, and I can't wait to hear the feedback. Last thing, for anybody who wants to stay in touch with you, where can they find you at?
They can go to Doug Depte on Instagram, DougDepte. And also, if you are an investor looking for, say, funding, we do have access to funding, where my wife Larissa actually manages that department. So there's a couple different things we got going on here, but you can go right to acquisitions.capital.
Got it. Cool. We got it.
Acquisitions.capital.
We'll drop that in the show notes as well, so you'll be able to click on the link in the show notes. But yeah, man, it's been a phenomenal time. I appreciate you, my brother. I can't wait to have you back on so you can drop some more jewels. I'm sure that we'll be able to do something in person as well. Real estate is the key to generational wealth. I'm glad to see you're building. I'm glad to see you're teaching other people how to build it. And man, we just appreciate you coming on and dropping all these jewels.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
No doubt, my man. We'll talk soon.
All right. You got it.
That's all we got for this episode. Thank you for sticking around. That truly means a lot to me, and hopefully that means that we delivered massive value on this one. If you haven't already, the way that you could say thank you to myself and the team is just by heading over to iTunes and leaving a review and a rating. That's what iTunes loves to see. That's how we get out there even more. And I would definitely be grateful for it. I know the team would as well. Do me a favor and head on over to dreamnationpodcast.com. That's where you're going to be able to find all of the resources that we talked about in today's episode, as well as more exclusive content. And you'll also be able to sign up to our email list, where we have more exclusive content. And we always love to hear the feedback from you all, because you're our tribe. So remember, in the dream we trust. We'll see you on the flip side.